This is the Iranian desert, my first trip in this country, and also my first trip as a photographer. A few months ago, I decided I would give up my postgraduate degree to fulfill this passion. I think there are many family reasons for this. And luckily, I've got a friend who offers me the opportunity to take a journey to Iran. Firstly, we were supposed to work on a reportage on the Iranian movie business. But as soon as we got in Tehran, things didn't really went as it was planned. So we had to wait days and days to have credentials, to meet people, meetings that were always postponed. So after 2 weeks of this treatment, we decided to move. And the idea was to have a trip in the desert. So that's where we are now. And we're living, these kids and the families. I'm at the back of the car. I don't really see what I'm doing. I take a picture, and it's only when I got back in Paris that I saw what was happening in the sky. Firstly, I thought it was the scanners at the airport who damaged their rolls, but it was not this. I thought there was a problem with the camera also, but it was impossible. It took me weeks with the help of a friend to find out what happened. And if you try to guess by yourself, let me remember you that I was in a car. So this picture is really important for me because there's, of course, something magical, and it was, for me, the proof that I've chosen the right way, the right path for my life. So let's jump in time. We're in Berlin. It's my first trip to Germany. At the moment, I'm assisting several photographers and also having my own clients. I'm starting to work a lot. I still live in my studio in Paris. There are happy days. I really love this city. Its energy, even its unpleasant Parisians. Even if my flat is a little tiny, 20 meters square, for me it's paradise. And in Berlin, I'm catching up with history with a capital H. Because I see this building. This is Tempelhof. It's not yet a city park for Berliners. It's 12 kilometers square of something totally abandoned. And it was the largest airport in Europe for a while. Known because it was the infamous Nazis who built it. And after that became the hub for the bridge between East and West during the Berlin blockade. So here I am in front of this insane architecture between Circus Maximus and Lego. It's a really neoclassical Nazi stuff. And I'm trying to see if I can get inside, which is quite impossible. I really want to make some pictures, but I can't find a real good angle, a real story to tell. And then, because it's like that in photography sometimes, you just step backward, and you see a scene. You see the sky, you see the light, you see this incredible towers, you see this antenna, and then that's it. You have the picture. It's telling a story. It's really makes you feel as you were back in those times. And that's, for me, the basis of photography. You have to go back to the painting with the light, or paint with the light. Here we are, Mexico, first time of my life in South America. And I don't know why, Veracruz, the True Cross, was always in my mind. I really wanted to see this place. Maybe because of Cortés and the story. Maybe because of Gary Cooper and this famous Western. I used to watch Westerns with my grandmother evenings on the couch. Maybe because of the Mexican Revolution and the US Navy landing, I don't know. Maybe all these reasons. Of course, I've got Nicolas Bouvier in mind and Kerouac, and we're on the road. But I didn't expect it was so incredible. I know a bit of Africa for my youth. And, well, Veracruz is almost tropical over there. The heavy heat, the winter colors. There's something reminds me my past. I wasn't the photographer I am now, but for the first time of my life I was able to buy myself a Leica, the saint of the saints. Before the trip, it was an M6 TTL. It's a legend, an institution. It's like having a Ferrari mixed with a Land Rover. It's a magical camera. All the great photographers used this camera. I'm on the Malecon, I'm near the port, I'm walking around looking for pictures to take or to be taken. And when suddenly I see this statue in the building, and I see this woman with braided dread, pre-Hispanic looking. And even if the photo is not perfect, not well framed, for me, I cherish this photo because it tells, again, something, a link between pre-Hispanic history of Mexico with this woman and the New World with this building and this statue. That's why I choose this one. As I told you, it's not well framed. It's a bit underexposed on the woman. But sometimes you have to admit that taking a picture is not only a question of framing, of exposition, of aperture. It's also telling a story, telling something. And that's, for me, what's the most important in this picture.
That old soft spot, eh, Ben?
Even Ace had one, Joe.
That was Ace's mistake.
Let's meet René now. René is the one with the cigarette in the picture. He smokes a lot. He also loves to walk around, listen to music, smiles all the time. He makes a lot of noise too, especially when he turns on the radio. It's autumn, it's a bit cold outside, but the fresh air is good. It took me about 2 years to make this photo. That's a long time to take a picture. It was 2 years of negotiating, writing emails, going to appointment and meetings, phone calls, to finally get the authorization to access the institute where René lives. Because despite the appearances, René is blind and deaf, meaning he lives in darkness and silence since he was born. We're in the great suburbs of Paris, and I've been coming oftenly in this institute for several months now to photograph the daily life of people suffering from deaf blindness. Maybe you know the story of Helen Keller. So it's she and a discussion I had with an old friend of mine who convinced me to make a story about these people, on how it is possible to live in this world without being able to see, speak, or hear the outside world. How is it possible to communicate? That was the main question. Which communication is possible? And at that time, when I started this work, I couldn't imagine I would open a Pandora's box with many questions and few answers. Thankful again for the people at Le Monde at this time. They had a great idea to accept this assignment, this job. And the editor-in-chief had the excellent idea to associate people from Arte Radio, which is the radio from Arte, the German-French TV broadcast, and an excellent and fantastic sound engineer, and we made a great achievement with this report. I'm really proud of it, and it's still being one of my best stories at the moment.
Ouais, tu cherches quelque chose qui n'existe pas. À quoi bon rester ici? À quoi bon? Dis-moi. Premièrement, les gens ne sont pas sympas. Deuxièmement, ils sont mal élevés. Troisièmement, le raciste. Et quatrièmement, les policiers, on
Ouais.
parle pas.
We're in Houston now. It's a city on the Belgian coast, Belgian seaside, and it's mostly known for its beaches and its casino. We're well before the migration crisis of 2015.
C'est pas l'Europe ici.
And Italy and Greece are already facing a major migration issue. In France, we have Calais. It's the town the closest to the English coast and the famous Calais jungle. And Nicolas Sarkozy, this time, with the French government,
Il n'y a pas de sens de l'humour, il n'y a pas de sens de l'hospitalité. Il n'y a rien.
decides to get a tougher stance on these migrants. So they decide to close the Calais jungle and evacuate all the migrants from the city. Some of them, facing the situation, decide to
La police,
go north
la maltraitance, le racisme, la violence.
and to cross the Belgian border and to take the chance from Belgium to England. And with Houston, it's quite easy because there's only one way, one sea route from Houston to Ramsgate. Because I'm still, and I was, really interested in this crisis, this migration problems, this question of the exile, I decided to go and see by myself what was going on in Houston. I didn't see any women over there, so I contacted the only social welfare center that could help them, give them a hand, and by this way I could get in touch with some of these migrants. But it was after that. It was after this picture, these two pictures, because
À quoi bon rester ici? Pourquoi? Il n'y a pas d'espoir ici.
if I choose to show these two, one by side, it's because they were taken few minutes apart. The first one was taken before I started the report on the illegal immigration in Ostend. It was the first time I went in Ostend, and I was doing a kind of spotting on the harbor side to see how all this was organized, worked, a bit to get a pulse of the situation, with whom I began to talk. And very quickly it was established that they were illegals and that they wanted to go to England. And the discussion lasted about 2 or 3 minutes when in the blink of an eye they started to run, cross the security gate, as you see it, of the port, and rush into a lorry in the process of embarking on a ferry. I will only have the time to run beside them and take this image of the smiling man running towards freedom and a new life. And a little later, as I was passing by again by this fence, I came across a police patrol, and I saw that they had no choice than to use their own handcuffs to block the way to repair the fence. And for me, this picture is quite a symbol where you try to fix problems with tiny solutions. And of course, it's not by building walls and fences that we will find solution to this problem, and especially not with handcuffs. So let's stay in Ostend. It's beach, it's casino, it's senior citizens. And Ostend because there are stories funniest than the others. And this is a story of a famous international singer who's fleeing the US to escape the IRS and goes to London. This singer, this international singer, it's a star really, is in a complete depression in London. He starts to drink and use drugs and so on. And because it's Belgium and they're used to surrealistic stories, when this man is in London, he meets a Belgian guy, a fan, and a music producer. And when this producer sees this singer in this kind of state, well, he convinced him to come with him to Ostend. Like, to reshape and to escape this depression. Oh, by the way, the singer is Marvin Gaye, one of the king of soul from the 70s. But now we're in the 80s, and Marvin Gaye is in Ostend. And when he's in Ostend, well, he starts to work again. He's less depressed. And he's gonna write one of the best, one of the most known, one of this kind of legendary song, the love song, a classic at the pantheon of songs, which is Sexual Healing. And few many people knows the story. And when I look at this picture with this puppy and this woman in fur and this light, this beach, well, it reminds me this kind of situation you can have in Belgium. This strange situation, strange encounters. And at the moment I'm still working on an editorial project. I'd like to make a book on it, on Ostend, on Marvin Gaye. And I think this picture will stay maybe one of the best I've done for this one. So we're back in Mexico for the second time. This time I'm covering the presidential election, and I managed with the newspaper to keep a daily blog on it. It's a huge project because I'm not used to write about my pictures, and so it's gonna be a lot of work. But I'm lucky. I sublet a room in journalists from El País flat, and she helps me as a fixer. It will help for the work. I also have in mind to finish a more personal project, and the idea came to me during my first day and the reading of a book of a French author called Jean Vautrin, called The King of Garbage. It's a noir novel, set it up in a garbage dump. And And this is exactly this garbage dump we're talking about. It's one of the largest open-air dump in the capital city. And because Mexico needed a business district, as the city in London or La Défense in Paris, it was decided to build the district on this garbage dump. So of course it's a huge and pharaonic project, and we talk about evictions, we talk about environmental problems, corruptions, a lot of money, really a lot of money. But I won't go further here, it's too long to go into detail. So back to the picture. I've been working in the area for a while now with my camera, between wastelands and buildings, a monstrous neighborhood, the largest mall in Latin America. I'm oftenly arrested or checked by numerous police patrols that are guarding this neighborhood. For happy few, for rich people. Rich people that is said they are taking helicopters directly on the roof from their buildings to go to the airport to avoid the traffic jams. Or that they have wild animals as pet companions in their flats. But anyway, this picture, as often, because I didn't realize yet what was on, I took it because of this gigantic hall, these buildings, these trees. And it's only when I got back again home that I noticed the broom of the trucks below, because they were really tiny, and the comparison is quite, for me, a good summary of this situation. It's really a good picture for giving an idea of this dimension. You see really tiny trucks, which are normally big, buildings to sell, trees to collapse, as it was just, I don't know, a movie set or a toy game. So how could I just imagine choosing 10 of my most important pictures without putting this one? Because this one is one of the most incredible experience for me as a young photographer and as a music lover. So when I was a student, I used to work in an English bookstore in Paris, and I met a friend who will become an important music journalist for an important music magazine in Paris. We already worked together from time to time on different portraits and interviews. I remember this one from Don Was, who was the producer of the Rolling Stones, and we had to make the interview in a Chinese restaurant in the suburbs of Paris, near the studio. He couldn't give us more than maybe half an hour during his lunch. So there's more better background for a portrait than a Chinese restaurant. And one day he calls me, quite mysterious, without giving me any details, just tell me that there was an interview of a famous band schedule. He couldn't say when or where, just told me to be ready to move as soon as he would give me a phone call. And a few days later, he calls me. And he asked me to meet him an hour after in a studio in Paris. And when I arrived there, I'm quite in a shock, because he didn't tell me the interview was and the portrait was about the most famous musicians of the French touch of the moment, the most well-known helmets on the planet. That's the Daft Punk. And well, I know he's got an hour interview. I have 5 minutes to make the portraits. I see the room. It's not really a room where you can make photos. I just noticed these 2 red seats, and in my head it goes quite quickly. The 2 red seats, the black suits, the white wall, and I don't know why. I asked the manager of the studio to go outside and buy me a newspaper, and that's it. I have the picture. And this picture is important for me because I'm now one of the few photographers who've got a portrait of the Daft Punk, and it's really important, and I always think about these pictures when I've got a doubt, because whatever the situations are, I've been able to make this portrait with nothing, few details, and that's a lesson for me always. Some choices are more difficult than others to make, and I wanted to put this one. This one is a kind of photo that doesn't need really any comment. We're in 2015, and a few days before I received a message from my former head of agency that someone slaughtered people, murdered people in the Jewish Museum in Brussels. And it's quite strange how memory works. Because as for 9/11, I remember exactly where I was at this moment. I was just arrived in the Netherlands on the beach with family. This act is going to mark a turning point in European history. So several days after this massacre, several people came to pay their respects in front of the museum. And one man comes forward. I'm here to cover the event. He comes forward, lays down his flowers, and collapses in tears. I won't know more. I don't know his name, where he came from, but it left for me a deep impression, as what happened at the Jewish Museum left an impression in Belgium, in Europe. And from that day, for me, life was a bit different. I knew already that building walls, making wars on foreign souls were not the solution. But from that moment, I knew it was exactly the contrary that we had to do. So I could have named this picture Splendors and Miseries of an Artist in Europe, or how can a beautiful adventure can become a disaster due to geopolitics and politics. A beautiful story with a sad ending. A bit like this barge, this boat with these statues in the middle of the port of Rotterdam. So we're in the year 2011. It's the year of Mexico in France, cultural year. That's how I was contacted to find out if a report on a Mexican artist exhibiting statues at the Grand Palais in Paris might interest me. The artist is Rivellino. It's well known in Mexico. So I decided to make a few phone calls to see if I can sell the story to a newspaper, whoever. Finally, the newspaper Le Monde and the website decide to produce a slideshow with an interview. And the sculpture's idea is to take the barge from Rotterdam to London and then from London to Paris by the Thames and the Seine. So it's a huge project. Everything is decided and scheduled. In the train to Rotterdam, it's 6 o'clock in the morning. I'm coming from Brussels, where I'm now. It's still dark outside, and it's going to be a long day. I've got to follow the adventure for the whole week. That's the plan with the editorial staff. The train has just started, and my phone rings, and Celine is calling me. Celine is the PR of Rivellino, the press agent. She wanted to know if I was already on the train, and I hear in her voice something like a doubt, or she's embarrassed. And I know why, because a few seconds after that, she just tells me that the Year of Mexico has been totally cancelled during the night because the two countries are in the middle of a diplomatic conflict. So I'm on a train and I can't go back, and at the moment I don't know what to do with this assignment. So I arrive in the port of Rotterdam. Everybody is a bit depressed, but the work on the barge has begun, and I need to find another story to tell if I want to save the job and the situation. So I've got an idea, and I'm lucky to work with good people. The idea is adopted, and the story becomes the chronicle of a shipwreck. I will stay and will tell the story of this artist lost with his statues in the port of Rotterdam. We don't know whether or not he will be able to exhibit them at the end. After considering everything, at the end of the week, even getting back the barge to St. Petersburg, it's death in the soul that we have to face it, and he will have to face it. He won't be able to exhibit the statues. And so after the last interview for my report, for my assignment, I will take this last picture of a man lost in a harbor with his statues in the kind of middle of nowhere.